Hey, everybody. Happy Thursday and welcome into the Volquest Mailbag Podcast here at Volquest.com. And, of course, on our YouTube page. If you're watching on YouTube, hey, doesn't it look good? We don't look good, but the production looks good. Throw it a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and $1 for 1 year. A couple days away, Tennessee and Georgia, $1 for 1 year at Volquest.com.
Speak for yourself, Kane.
Speak for yourself. Okay. I am speaking for myself.
I look amazing in the top right box.
I have the prettiest
Hollywood
hair
Squares, baby,
amongst us right here.
I look like I'm getting ready to get voted off the island this morning. So what's getting ready to happen to me?
I look like I just got voted off the island.
We got plenty of questions to get into. Let's go ahead and start with Zeusify. Biggest key for Tennessee's offense and defense against Georgia. Austin, if you want to start this one off.
Well, slowing down Brock Bowers, for me, offensively, I think it's shooting yourself in the foot. I think Tennessee's going to be able to move the ball. They did it last year, took it to the red zone a bunch. Got to be able to finish it off. Tennessee wasn't able to really hit the big play last year against Georgia like they have this year. I think that can change. Georgia's not as good defensively. Still have some really great players, and they're still really, 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 really good. But they're not. I mean, last year's was a generational defense, right? For me, I just think, offensively, it's not, shooting yourself in the foot, playing at 1st and 25 or 2nd and 15 or 3rd and 12. It's playing at 3rd and 5, 3rd and 4, those type of things. So, I think that's the biggest key for me offensively. And like I said, defensively, it's just making sure Brock Bowers just doesn't dominate you on 3rd downs, where Tennessee's got to be able to get off the field.
Yeah, for me, it's two things. One, you got to be able to run the football and have some offensive balance. You look, Josh Heupel's lost one conference game as Tennessee's head coach where they've run for over 150 yards. So that's kind of a key number. They got to be able to get there. The only game they lost was the Ole Miss game a year ago. You look at what they've done in the ground game this year. They've run for 150 yards or more in every SEC game. So that jumps out to me offensively. Got to have balance in the run game. And then defensively, it's get off the field on 3rd long. They couldn't do that in the Florida game, which is why Florida hung around. They did that in the Kentucky game, and Kentucky got blown out. Don't let Stetson Bennett rush for 12 yards on 3rd and 7. When you get Georgia's going to drive the football. Georgia's going to score some points. When you have an opportunity to get off the field, Rob Lewis, Tim Banks got to have an answer. He's got to dial something exotic up or whatever. They have to get off the field on 3rd and long and not let Georgia extend drives.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add to what you two say. I mean, my biggest one is run the football. And not for 250 yards, but for enough to where you stay out of 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8 all day against that Georgia defense. Even without Nolan Smith, they've got athletes that are going to be able to get after the quarterback, run it, and again, not a dominating run performance, but enough to where you are keeping yourself in manageable down and distance situations. To me, that is by far the biggest thing of the day.
It's a two-parter here, Rob. We'll stay with you quickly. The strength and weakness of this Hoops team this year. What do you think it'll be?
Strength is the backcourt, without question. I mean, I think it may be one of the best backcourts in the country when you're talking about Zakai and Santi, Josiah, Tyreek Key. It's a small sample size, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say the kid is going to be a really good SEC player. 26 points against Gonzaga off the bench the other night. I'm not looking for 26 out of him every night, but the kid is a really good player. And the backcourt to me is going to be among the best in the conference, if not the country. And after that, it's just what do you get out of the post? I think Olivier is much, much better. But behind him, Uroshi's got to prove that he can do it night in and night out. I love the potential of Jonas Adu, but is he ready to be a primetime player? I mean, he's got all the makings. He's got all the tools. Is he ready to play 20 minutes a game at the high level that you need? So strength, backcourt, question mark, post.
I Heart Vols. Brent Hubbs, is hype proving it's not all about the Jimmies and the Joes?
No, I think to run his scheme effectively, you got to have Jimmys and Joes, Eric. And I think what we're seeing is this scheme is showing that there were some Jimmys and Joes on this team. I think it goes hand in hand, right? It's Jalen Hyatt has always been a talent. Does this scheme make Jalen Hyatt more talented? Absolutely.
Always fast, Hubbard.
Speed never had a bad day, right? Look at Darnell Wright, Eric. I mean, he's a really good player. He's in a right fit, with an offensive line coach, and this system has fit him well. So, if you'd have said 18 months ago, does Tennessee have the talent to compete with Georgia? My answer to you would be no. Have they caught Georgia talent-wise in 18 months, Eric? The answer is no. But the scheme closes that gap. So it's a little bit of both. I don't think Josh Heupel can go and get the intramural team and put them in pads and score 40 points a game. So he's got some talent, but he's obviously putting that talent in the best situation to go make plays with his scheme. So to me, they both go hand in hand.
And let's not forget, they do have a guy that's looks like a Heisman Trophy finalist at quarterback. So
that helps.
Yeah,
and Joes are still pretty important.
And hey, they've created that Joe, right? I mean, because he was, Eric, he wasn't very good. Austin, he wasn't very good when he got to Tennessee. He was so bad early on when the staff looked at him, they went and got Joe Milton because they didn't think he could play. So give the staff credit for getting that out of him. But yeah, I mean, you got to have talent. You're not winning without talent.
I would go back. I would say they thought he had limitations, because of how he was playing, right? I mean, he was checking it down. He was, as you say, he wasn't letting it rip, and they've got him to let it rip. So agreed. It's taking a diamond and polishing it up. And I think that's, we're taking a 3-star and making them play like a 4-star, or a 4-star and making them play like a 5-star. It's the added development that's been impressive. And that, that goes to some of the staff, whether it's Rodney Garner on the defensive line or Glenn Ellerby on the offensive line. That's where I really see it the most, is what those line coaches have done, in the last 18 months. It's been impressive.
Hendon's definitely a Joe because there's already 2 other Jimmys on offense, so I want to get that out there. But no, we talk about every single week on the Rocky Top Rewind, Brent, the new wrinkle that we saw from the game the previous day. There's a new one every single week, so it's a little bit of both. The development's been really good, but I mean, for Golish and Hype to scheme up some of those mismatches, it's been pretty fun to watch. Sam Smith, 2233. Is this the biggest regular season football game in program history? And another question directed to me: how would you defend Brock Bowers and Darnell Washington? Austin, if you'll allow it, I'll go ahead and jump in first here. As far as the tight ends,
Grant Packer, yeah, he's doing it again.
As far as the tight ends, much like Stetson Bennett, I mean, you're gonna try to throw a bunch of different stuff at him. You got to get your hands on him, right? It's gonna be linebackers. It's gonna be that star player. It's gonna be the safeties. If you're playing zone, you got to knock him off, slow him down a little bit. So when he comes through your zone, you gotta get hands on him. He's gonna make his plays, right? So we'll see what happens, but kind of mix some things up. If you're running in man coverage, you got to hope there's a guy over the top that can kind of help out as well. But more importantly, be physical with those tight ends at the linebacker position at the point of attack and knock them off the route. They're bigger, and Brock Bowers is fast as some wide receivers. Darnell Washington is the biggest receiving target you will see all season long. You have to be really physical with those guys. But anything you want to add, Austin? And also, is this the biggest regular season game in program history?
Yeah, I'll tackle that last one. It's the biggest one in a couple of weeks. I mean, it's like the Alabama game, because both were undefeated and you felt like Tennessee had a chance, was such a massive game and labeled as such. And people were talking about the biggest game in Neyland in, however many years. I mean, it's a massive game. I mean, to know where Tennessee's been the last 15 years and, to be sitting here, as the number one team in the college football playoff rankings. I mean, think about it. Tennessee before, Tuesday had never even made the top 15, since the playoff rankings existed. So, they've just kind of climbed up and found their way. And yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's the biggest one in regular season program history, but it's an awesome atmosphere to be at. It's a huge game for Tennessee, and it's definitely the biggest one in the last 25 years. In my opinion, I would even go back to 98. I would say this is a bigger game than Florida was in 98. And, this is definitely bigger than that 8-0 versus 8-0 Arkansas game.
Let's go to Volquest historian Hubbard. It's the biggest of my lifetime.
Yeah, I think when you look at where it's at and the way the playoff structure is now,
late in the year too.
Yeah, late in the year. What's right? I mean, there's a couple of the games that come to mind, right? The build up to the '96 Florida game, which was a 2-4 game where Tennessee fell down 35-0. That was the whole summer talk, was that game, because that a lot of people thought that might be 1-2 in Neyland Stadium. So that one is up there, but it was so early in the season that it didn't have all the pressure was on Tennessee, I guess, at that point, because the way everything was structured. Then you go to 01, and Tennessee's playing at Florida late in the year there to win the SEC East. That's probably the most comparable one when you look at that. Both of those teams were top 5 teams. Tennessee was a heavy underdog going into that game. They're an underdog here. The Eastern Division was going to be decided that night in Gainesville. Everybody had wanted that game in November for years. So that's probably the most comparable game but between the two teams. Tennessee wasn't, I guess, they were unbeaten. No, they were not unbeaten because they had lost to Georgia. So that was a little bit different. But to me, that's probably the most comparable game when you factor in calendar, rankings, what's on the line. That 01 Florida game probably jumps out as comparable to this one.
Let's go to Ramrod 495. Rob Lewis, is Turnage and Slaughter the best 2 cornerbacks on the team, or is Kentucky and Football Jesus just that bad?
It's hard to say, but I mean, if you just look at that game, you have to say yes. But also, I don't think Kentucky's receivers are not comparable to what Alabama rolls out there, to what LSU rolls out there with Butte. It was the best game we've seen for 2 corners. Now, was it the best competition that they faced? I don't know, but I felt like it was pretty clearly the best game we saw 2 cornerbacks have in tandem.
I just like that they played the ball, Rob.
The Nico Slaughter turned around, looked for it, jumped, made a play, AP.
Well, and Turnage jumped his. I mean, he was aggressive on that play and went and got that pick. And, I mean, they felt different last week, whether that was Kentucky or Levis or whatever it was. They just felt like they played different. And I know it's 2 different really players that hadn't played a whole lot at the corner spot this year, but it just felt different.
They made plays, Eric, that they didn't make against UT Martin, Akron, Ball State, because they weren't giving up that kind of cushion, and so that's the difference. I mean, they played aggressively. Now that can bite you in the rear end sometimes, Eric. But I mean, we've heard Josh Heupel talk for a month, 6 weeks about tighter coverage. Those 2 guys put their foot in the ground and played tighter coverage last week, and they reaped the benefits of it.
And when you were giving cushion to Nico Slaughter, the guy catches a slant right in front of you, come up and lay the wood. And we haven't seen that from any of those guys, anybody in the secondary, not just cornerbacks, all season long. So it was fun to see. It was a whole lot of fun to see. I think you're going to see a bit of a rotation there, because I think Slaughter's deserved to play somewhere, at least get some snaps. Maybe not, starter snaps, 50, 60 snaps a game, but I think he needs to play somewhere. That's for sure.
I'm not seeing that kind of aggression and beeline since they put out the coffee last week at Neyland, and Rob made a beeline for it and took it out into the media.
I was actually going to say, I thought you were going to say your honeymoon, AP.
I thought you were going to talk. I thought you were going to talk about the race to the ice cream line at the half at Neyland Stadium in the press box. You about to have a fast pass to get an ice cream in that deal, because that's a madhouse to get to that one. I mean, it looks like Black Friday at Walmart trying to get to the ice cream cooler.
Well, that's what happens when you lock it up before it's all locked up before halftime.
Because there wouldn't be any left at the half.
The fact that so many people in that press box prioritize literally their day around that ice cream, it's just shocking to me. Austin, this is a good one for you. This is from Melton_Vols. Biggest position need in the transfer portal this offseason? This was a popular question in the Monday Night Chat.
Well, there's more than one. I don't think there's just a biggest. I think if you just said, what do you need most of, I would tell you tight end, because there's no guarantee. I mean, we'll see what Jacob Warren does. A year ago, I think he was definitely coming back for a second year. Does he come back again? If not, I mean, you're tight end room is extremely thin. So I would tell you tight end would probably be number one, but they could use help at linebacker. They could use help at offensive tackle. And really, if you get just a really great player out there and you go after them, it doesn't matter where you're at that position. Tennessee, if a stud wide receiver won the portal and called Tennessee, I think they're going to say, "Nah, we're good. We're good." No, you're going to take the best players you can get. So I'm interested to kind of see what kind of attention Tennessee gets from those that go in the transfer portal after seeing the year Tennessee's had, the fun they're having, the points they're scoring, all that stuff. What kind of attention do they require?
Rob, let's go here from Pine with basketball starting up. Which team, football, basketball, or baseball, finishes with the highest ranking?
Magic 8 ball. Magic 8 ball, Rob Lewis.
That's a great question.
Who's the starting center in 2037, Rob? Go.
I'll go football just because, they're number one right now. There's no guarantee that either of the two, but that's impossible to answer. But I'll go football just because, they are number one. I don't know if basketball is going to get there. Baseball probably will, but I'll go football.
Isn't that crazy to say football in this conversation? Could you imagine saying that last
summer? Isn't it crazy that that's a question?
Yeah. I know. Yeah.
To
begin
exactly
with. Right. Matt 3128, Austin Price. How good is the in-state 24 class compared to the last few? 22 was a really good class, but 24 is good too.
Yeah, it's a good class. When you look at Boo and you look at Marcus Gorey and you look at, Kamaro Brown and you look in the mid-state with Edwin Spillman and Caleb Beasley, I wouldn't call it super, super deep. And I think the one thing they're void of is D lineman, O lineman. It's a lot of skill, right? So, but some really, really good players. But I just keep going back, and I'm just deviating from his question. But Chattanooga, where have you been all these years? All of a sudden, they've got all this talent down there in Chattanooga in 24 and 25, and it's just super impressive to see Martellus Carter, Cameron Sparks, Amari Jefferson. There's a ton of talent down there in that Chattanooga area. And I think that's good for Tennessee because that's a area that, it's not too far from Knoxville.
Nashville 615. How much fun has this year been to cover? Have you let yourself enjoy it? Let's go, Brent, here. Do you truly believe Tennessee can win it all?
How do you not think Tennessee can win every game that they play? I'm not saying they're going to win at Georgia, but I said it on this podcast a month or so ago. I don't think this is a bad matchup for Tennessee. I don't, because I think Tennessee has improved in the offensive line and they can move it. And I don't think Georgia's defense is generational, as Austin called it earlier. I think it's a great way to describe it. They're not bad, but they're not what they were a season ago, in my opinion. So, yeah, I think Tennessee could win it all. they have to have some breaks and they have to play well, and they got to stay healthy, all those things that everybody has to do. You get into this game, it's a toss-up type game. You get into playoffs, I think that's what you're talking about here. You get to the SEC championship game, that's what you're talking about with Tennessee. So I think anything's possible with this team. In terms of enjoying it, yeah, we're human, right? Rob, how much easier is the matchup piece to write when you're not sitting there going, they got no chance to win this game, right? And that's just one example. So there's no doubt covering a winning team is more enjoyable. And I've told this story on the message board. I stood outside the media center once I got off the field at the Alabama win, and I just stood there and watched, just because you don't see that. We haven't seen that at Tennessee. So yeah, if you're not enjoying this, I don't think you have much of a human side, right?
It's just more fun to go. To go sit in the press box and cover a game that means something. AP, I think it was the Florida game. We did the 2-minute drill, and when I said, it's like, man, this is the first time I've been excited to walk in this stadium in years. And it's the truth. We have a fantastic job. Don't be wrong. It's fantastic, and I count my blessings all the time. But when you're going in to watch Tennessee play Alabama as a 28-point underdog, it's like, Eric, this will be lost on you. But Hubbard, it's like the old Looney Tunes cartoon where the sheepdog's checking in, you just kind of clock in, howdy, Ralph. That's what you're doing for the day.
Yeah, well, I mean, think about this, Austin. What's better, traveling to Athens, Georgia for this game this week, or getting on a plane and going to Eugene, Oregon as a 24-point underdog, knowing the Vols had no chance to compete in that game? And again, not knocking a job. You get to go to Eugene, Oregon, see Oregon for the first time and watch a game there and see what it's all about. But it's different when you're covering a team that everybody's talking about and has a chance to win every game they play.
100%. I think so many people they try to hide behind the media is impartial. I think I can look objectively and still have went to Tennessee and be able to say Tennessee sucks in this area. They're good in this area. It's as an alum, I mean, it is fun to see Tennessee actually, be worth something again. Eric doesn't understand it, but I mean, you guys were around long before I was. But I mean, even like my first few years covering Tennessee went to the SEC championship game in 2004. Tennessee went to the SEC championship game in 2007. It's been a lot of bleh since then. And so to kind of see these moments, I mean, I've sat there. I mean, I'd say after the Alabama game, I just went home and just watched the reaction videos. Everybody's different views on Facebook of the kick and the celebration and stuff. And I just found that fascinating. I found it fascinating, to watch just the joy to see the two old guys that came up to us, on the field at Alabama. They were just happy, and Tennessee fans were just, some of them, I'm sure, wondered if they'd ever get to see Tennessee be good again. Some young people, as you pointed out, Eli's never really watched Tennessee be good in his life. They wondered, is that actually ever going to happen in my lifetime? And so, here we are, 2022. Whether they're number one in the college football playoff rankings after this week or not, it's been a whirlwind of fun for everybody involved, and it'll continue to be because Tennessee's not going to lose the final three. At worst, they're going to be 11-1, sitting there hoping for a little bit of chaos down the stretch so they can slide back into the playoffs. And again, worst case scenario here, Tennessee's headed to New Year's 6 to New Orleans or something like that at 11-1, and Tennessee fans would have signed up for that at the beginning of the season. Tennessee's playing with house money, and that's the easiest way to look at it. There's no scenario that ends poorly for Tennessee, in my opinion.
I've already been to New Orleans, so I'm trying to go to some other places I haven't been to.
Yep, Eric. Well, you didn't hold that python down there on Bourbon Street. I know that's one that you want to check off. Yeah.
But we did some other things down there. A whole lot of fun. Not appropriate for the podcast, right?
What did we do that wasn't appropriate for the podcast?
Just kidding.
We
it's a joke.
Walk up and down the street, and everybody kept going, Eric Kane.
Yeah, because that happens. Yeah, okay. There's the joke. There's the joke.
I've been a lot of places with AP and never had that much fun, Eric.
Hendersonville Vol 15. Brent, let's go to you on this because you mentioned physicality in Georgia in a couple of days ago. Do you think Slaughter has the speed to run with elite SEC receivers, and how would his physicality help with Georgia and those tight ends?
I think he runs. I think he runs good enough. I mean, can he run step for step with Barryon Brown or the fastest guy in the league? I don't know about that, but I think he runs well enough to be a corner in the SEC. And I think physically he plays well enough to play, the star position, in this deal. I think the big thing with the Nico Slaughter's got to go do it every day on the practice field. Okay. I mean, I think he's got to be better on the practice field, more focused on the practice field every day. But from a talent standpoint, yeah, I think Nico Slaughter can play multiple positions at Tennessee. He's already proven that he can. And I think he's got the talent to be a really nice player if he's completely locked in, dialed in, and focused the way he needs to. From a physicality standpoint, it's hard to push Washington around. You're not going to do that. But you said it best. You got to try to just knock them off their route. You got to try to create some unbalance with them, if you will, so that their route timing changes a little bit with Stetson Bennett. I think that's one of the keys at the line of scrimmage. I'm going to be curious to see how Tim Banks plays those guys. What does he do personnel-wise? What does he do scheme-wise to try to defend those two? Because that's where Stetson Bennett's most comfortable going with football right now.
Doolittle Vol, is what we're seeing right now this 1 year a perfect storm scenario or something with long-term sustainability, Rob?
Well, obviously you have to keep recruiting, but I think it's sustainable when you just look at the coaching staff and what they've done in 2 years. I mean, less than 2 years. I mean, what's the saying? Like, I don't necessarily agree with it, but the cliche is by year 2, if you have a head coach.
Yeah.
I mean, I think with what Josh has done and 21 games here, I think he pretty much has proven he can coach in this league, and you have to recruit. But the silver lining in that for Vol fans is they're beating Alabama. They're competing in the SEC with, if you just throw the roster up and throw the recruiting rankings up. I mean, Tennessee's in the middle of the pack of the SEC or a little below the middle of the pack when you're just talking about straight up where the recruiting classes would have ranked. So, yeah, I mean, I've seen enough from this coaching staff. I definitely think it's sustainable.
Yeah, I think the question is, what is sustain? What's your definition of sustainability?
Oh yeah, they're going to be ranked number 1 next year. I don't know,
right.
but they're
right.
not going 0-8 in the SEC.
No, but
I mean, you're going to have to replace some key pieces next year, obviously.
But I think the point Rob is making, and I agree with him 1,000%, is there's nothing about this coaching staff that says this league's too much for them. They're overwhelmed in this league. They can't compete in this league. They can't win in this league. There's nothing that they have proven or nothing they've shown. I mean, game management, Austin, nothing they've done says the moment's too big, the league's too big, that their system doesn't work in this league. You have no evidence of that through 18 games.
No, not at all. Again, they pushed Alabama and Tuscaloosa a year ago. They just fell flat in the fourth quarter with a team that just wasn't good enough. They moved the ball up and down against Georgia last year and just couldn't punch it in against that generational defense. You're right. And I think that bears out with this team. Like, this moment won't be too big. Tennessee may not win Saturday. Georgia may be the better team, but it won't be because Tennessee wasn't ready, isn't ready. Josh Heupel didn't have them ready. I just think that, this is a game that Tennessee goes in with house money. They don't feel any pressure, and they'll be ready to go.
NWGA Vol asks, how do each of you think Tennessee would fare in a rematch with Alabama in Atlanta? Also, do we see an orange helmet this year? Brandon,
I will go yes on the last question. And then as for Alabama, I think it would be a tough matchup. I really do. Bryce Young, is really, really good. But I mean, you want that chance, right? Here's my question. Since it's technically not the third Saturday in October, I mean, I get people are going to bring cigars regardless, but like, it's not really a cigar game, or is it just another cigar game because it's Tennessee and Alabama? How would you approach it?
It's always a cigar game when those two
get
together. It's always going to be one of those.
It'd be amazing because it's, in all the years when Tennessee was actually going to Atlanta, Alabama wasn't, and then Alabama was and Tennessee wasn't. They've all the years of the SEC championship game, we've never seen the rematch in Atlanta.
And here's what you need in that game, Rob Lewis. You need orange jerseys and crimson jerseys against each other.
I could not agree more.
If they're playing, now that's a big if, but if they're there in that deal, let's roll that deal.
Why is that not the way? Why is that? Why is it not always that way? I mean,
I have no idea.
It seems to make it just seems to make so much sense, and we look so fantastic
because the conference outthinks themselves. They set in place these silly rules instead of just saying, "Hey, look, if they're similar, they don't need to be. But if they're different enough, it's like Gibbs and Hall started doing this. Hubbs knows this because his kid plays for Gibbs. I mean, I think that's one of the neatest things when those two teams play that they wear. Each wear their home uniforms. I just think it looks good. I think it's a really nice touch, and when you can have them to be that different, it's neat.
Well, UCLA, USC. I mean, they
fantastic. Do it. Yeah, it's fantastic that way. So, yeah, anyway, to the question, it would be a heck of a challenge. Anytime beating the same team twice in a year, Rob, is hard. And that was a back and forth game that could have gone either way, depending on a couple plays at the end, in the final 4 minutes of that game for sure. So it would be a real accomplishment to beat that caliber of team twice in the same year.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to have to beat Bryce Young twice in a year, but also, Tennessee played him without Cedric Tillman.
They did.
Would be tough. I'll tell you this: Tennessee's not beating him 10 times out of 10 times. That's for dang sure. Because Alabama's such a good football team, and Bryce Young is a good quarterback. So that is what you want, though. As Austin said, I mean, you want to relish that opportunity to go and do that again, because that'd be exciting. Gonna do two more here. First from P. Frills 14. With Harsin now being fired, do you think a guy like Jeremiah Cobb, Austin Price, will be exploring his options, especially with Tennessee looking to add in the running back? And Tennessee was recruiting him pretty heavily. He was here on an official visit this summer. Also, do you think Alex Gola should be a name for the Auburn job?
No. I answered that the other day in that chat. I mean, like, would he take that job 100%? But I just have a hard time believing Auburn's going to go out there and hire someone who has never been a head coach before. I think Golish is going to be a head coach sooner rather than later. I think because of the success that he has had this year and the, he's gotten quite a bit of credit for Tennessee's ability on offense. I think, and he's gotten a nice raise. I don't think that there's this rush to just go take anything. I think he'll be very, very calculated with the job he does eventually take to be a head coach. But he's going to be a head coach whether it's this year or next year. It's coming. And then Jeremiah Cobb. He's really tied to Cadillac. I think whoever they hire will keep Cadillac. I think he'll stick with Auburn. I've always thought Auburn had a chance down the stretch with whoever they hired to have a splash in recruiting because you have some Alabama kids that have went elsewhere that maybe Alabama wasn't going to take, but Auburn would have landed any other year, right? I mean, I think Tennessee has to watch Sylvester Smith. They can hold on to him, but it's definitely somebody that the new Auburn coach is going to call. The new Auburn coach is going to call Tamarion Parker, so even if he commits to Clemson, I think if you're Auburn, you're making that call. They're going to call Stanton Ramil. They're going to call, other players in
Vincent Lang.
Bison Lang, maybe. Who knows? We'll see. Point is like that whoever Auburn hires is going to call some of those in-state kids that Alabama wasn't going to take that were getting out of the state and see if they can get some recruiting wins really quick.
Yeah, which goes to the question is how quick can they get somebody hired?
Yes.
Because your window is going to be tight there. Obviously, they made a change to get going fast. They should be able to introduce somebody right after the regular season's over. You would think that thing is done, but we'll see how quick they get something with a new AD coming in.
Yeah, especially if it's a Hugh Freeze. But let's say their target is Lane Kiffin. Well, let's play devil's advocate here. Let's say Lane beats Alabama next week. All of a sudden they're the front runner to win the West unless LSU wins this week. And again, Alabama's probably going to beat Ole Miss. They always, but you just never know, right? Point is that could delay Auburn a little bit, which would help all those teams trying to hold on to these potential recruits. And who knows, those recruits may stick with those schools anyway. But I do think if you're Auburn, you have a chance to have some recruiting wins by trying to keep some of those in-state kids in state.
All right, last one. It's going to go to _Hunter_. Tuesday, you guys discussed the importance of Cooper Mays on the offensive line. Who is being looked at next in line at the center position? It doesn't mean if he gets hurt or injured tomorrow. Asking a long-term center, who would be after Cooper Mays, Brent Hubbs?
I think that's a good question. Well, it's Jerome Carvin right now, but where would they go after that? Is it Addison Nichols at guard? I don't know what they would. I don't know what their answer there in the spring is. And I think, when that moment comes, maybe that guy's not here yet. I don't know. I don't think, Rob, people are truly appreciative of what Cooper Mays does for this offensive line.
He's a smart kid. He is a super smart kid.
Yeah, I mean, his value. Darnell Wright's played well. Austin, all that group up front's played well. Jerome Carvin's a warrior up there. But part of the reason this offense is having the success it's had is the pace that it can go at because of Cooper's grasp of understanding and getting it done. I mean, there's so many times that you watch a play and he's standing at the official, waiting for the official to put the ball down because of his effort to get there. I don't think he's appreciated enough by some as the center at Tennessee.
Another thing, I'll jump in. And I'm sorry, AP, but and Halsey talked about this a little bit on Tuesday when he was talking about one of the things that makes Hooker so impressive is how fast he has to process, pre-snap reads because of how fast they go. Well, I think the same is true for Cooper. I mean, he doesn't have 20 seconds to identify the Mike linebacker and you say, hey, this is the line shift. I mean, he's making those same kind of reads that Hooker is in seconds.
I do want to add that Camp did tell Kevin here recently that he was committed to the Vols. So that's a that was told to me a couple of weeks ago. So Camp's in the boat early on.
Well, the more important, where's he committed to high school? AP, that's the bigger and more immediate question.
I don't know, but I've told him I've got some thought processes on that.
I'm sure that's the case. Funniest thing from Tennessee Prime Tuesday night was the fact that the two defensive linemen both called Cooper Mays the funniest player on Tennessee's football team. I don't know how many people would have had that in the pool. And Cooper's got a good personality, but the fact that without hesitation, Amari Thomas, Dejon Terry both called Cooper Mays the funniest player on the team was a bit of a surprise to me.
He's sneaky. I think that's the thing about Cooper is he'll pull something off on one of his teammates and they won't see it coming. He's very sneaky.
What class? Do the math on the fly. What class would Camp be? Class of
2034, I believe.
Oh. All right. So we know who the starting football center may be in 34, but not who the starting basketball center is.
Camp will be no center,
right?
Hubs. Have you seen this kid? They posted a picture on his. He's got an Instagram, and if you go on there and look, they posted a picture on there of it because Cooper really handles that, and it's him. And I saw him at the game, and I said, "Hey, the kids you're in that picture with, are they your age?" And he said, "Yes." And Hubs, they were to his waist. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, it's ridiculous.
So the question was long term at center. So maybe, down the line in 2034 or whatever. But yeah.
I mean, AP, where they go at center? I mean, it is a good question that we completely ignored.
I don't know.
I don't have an answer.
Maybe that's somebody they recruit. Maybe that's somebody they get out of the portal. Does Jackson Lampley get a look? Is it Addison Nichols? I mean,
Lampley makes some sense.
Right now, the answer is not.
Unless, I mean, right now it would just be slide Carvin in because that's
but I mean, spring practice.
Yeah. I don't think right now that there's an answer on the team unless somebody develops. You go get somebody.
Well, the good news is Cooper will be back. Technically, Cooper's got 2 more years, but I mean, I don't think he'll take it. He'll probably just take the one. But he'll be back next year, and they've at least got some time to kind of groom somebody to be that starting center spring of 2024.
Tennessee and Georgia, a massive football game coming up this weekend. Number 1 versus number 3, number 1 versus number 2, number 1 versus however you want to phrase it, top 5 matchup. Tennessee on the road, a clash of unbeatens between the hedges at 3:30. We continue coverage of this football game leading up to it on game day and, of course, post-game over at Volquest.com. $1 for 1 year. Go ahead and join us, inviting all Tennessee fans to come hang out with us. Only $1 at Volquest.com for 1 year. And if you're watching on YouTube, please hit that like button. The goal every video is to get up to 500 likes. So hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. Appreciate everybody for getting in some questions. We do it every Thursday right here at Volquest, the mailbag edition of the Volquest podcast. Appreciate you guys. For Austin Price, Brent Hubbs, and Rob Lewis, I'm Eric Kane. And enjoy the rest of your Thursday, everybody.